worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And good evening. Welcome on this March 11th, 2026. March 11th, 2026. It's a Wednesday night. And we're going to be joined tonight by James Lindsay. We're going to be joined by Pastor Brandon Holthaus, Pastor J.B. Hixson, our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron Lavarco, as just tons of rockets and missiles and drones are flying into Israel. We'll get an update from him. And yes, I'm standing. I don't normally stand, but the pinched nerve, the back issues, the sciatic nerve, it just gets better and then it gets worse. 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or maybe it's 3 steps forward and 5 steps back. I don't know. It depends on the time of day. But anyway, that you're going to see me moving a little more than normal because of some of the pain, and I just can't sit. It's just too painful right now. So if you're wondering, why is he moving more tonight? How is he doing that sitting in a chair? Because I'm not sitting in a chair, but I'm not going to complain too much because it could be worse. And some of you actually have it much worse than I do. But thank you for all your concern and prayers as we try to get healed from this what is reported to be a herniated disc in C6 and C7 in the neck. That's what they say. That's what they tell me. That's not where the pain is most of the time, although sometimes. But it, of course, ends up mostly in the shoulder blades and down the arm and leg and the foot going to sleep, the hand being asleep. But certainly this has got to work itself out soon, right? All right. What are we going to talk about tonight? How much do you guys know about Alexander Dugin? Alexander Dugin, a guy who Tucker Carlson even went to Moscow to interview. I want to talk a little bit about him tonight and his worldview, and Tucker interviewing him and him influencing other people. How about him influencing people like Steve Bannon? That's a question mark, not a statement. And by the way, did you see this? Confirmed, Steve Bannon speaking for CPAC. That's interesting. He's been involved in a lot of controversy lately, but they booked him at CPAC. It doesn't seem to be going over too well. We'll show you tonight. A lot of people have viewed this, over 800,000 or something like that, but only like 200 and some odd people actually liked it. So he's become a very controversial person. But what kind of role are Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, and others playing in helping to divide the MAGA movement? And what does the worldview of Alexander Dugin have to do with it? I'm going to ask James Lindsay about that tonight. I also want to talk a lot about this one right here. Are young conservatives okay? Where Gen Z is taking the American right. I mentioned this on radio today at 1 o'clock. I want to mention it tonight because it is indeed showing what many of us already know. Gen Zers are being really conditioned, sometimes through the media influencers, but they are, as it says, turning on Israel. I want to ask Pastor Brandon Holthaus tonight and Pastor J.B. Hixson, what do they think about this? I think one of the signs of the time may be the fact that the world, young people, are being conditioned to turn against Israel. What if you believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, maybe you believe in the mid-tribulation rapture, maybe you believe in a post-tribulation rapture, whatever you believe. But once I believe in pre-trib, not because I want escapism, but because I believe the scriptures clearly teach this. It makes perfect sense because it's the time of Jacob's trouble, Israel, not the time of the church's trouble. I will take you out of that. The world. That's what's in book of Revelation. He says to the church in one of the 7 letters, I will take you out. It's not take you through. I will take you out of that hour of testing. And I could go to a lot more. But doesn't it make sense that if the world turns so aggressively against Israel that a lot of the folks on the planet have to be conditioned to be against Israel? And I hate to say it, but I think the majority of the people that are going to be raptured are obviously going to tend to be older people because they had the benefit of great Bible teaching on radio and TV and churches. And much of that today has gone apostate, a great falling away from traditionally held biblical truths on both Christian radio, TV, churches, seminaries. It's really not as it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, right? So it would make sense that many of your Christians today, real Bible-believing, born-again Christians, are your older people. Not that there aren't younger people that are saved, but it's probably a very small percentage in reality. And so you have to ask yourself, is this conditioning of young people today to hate Israel part of that spiritual falling away, the apostasy that is, of course, predominant in the tribulation period, the end of days. Yes, there's going to be a great revival, but partly they're being murdered, those who become believers, almost as quick as they get saved, both Jew and Gentile. So the question is this survey, this article about Generation Z, is it really showing us the spiritual condition of young people in the world, which is really, I think, consistent with what you're going to see at the time of moving into the tribulation period? We'll talk about that. Oh, of course, the big news tonight is the FBI warns that Iran has aspired to attack California with drones. Now, last night I was telling you again about our concerns of America being attacked by drones by the IRGC. 2 years ago, Annie Cyrus and I were showing you IRGC footage and said we're very concerned about the IRGC launching attacks with drones on America, maybe out of Mexico. Now we're hearing FBI warning about California. How could this all fit in to the increase of anti-Semitism? Because they're going to have someone to blame. They're not going to blame Iran. I can promise you that. Most people are going to blame the Jews, that Israel got us into this, and now we've been attacked by Iran. So all of this has some connections we need to talk about tonight. Yes, we've had over 100 Hezbollah rockets go into northern Israel. We're going to get a report from our reporter on the ground, Aaron Lavarco, tonight. Let's see, Carrie Pergine, she's going at it with Mark Levin. They're fighting. I want to bring that up. Let's see, what else am I going to bring up tonight? Let's see, am I missing anything? I thought there was something else. But maybe that's it. Oh, the Trump sons are investing in a company vying to fill the gaps in U.S. drone industry. Does that mean we're going to be going to more wars? There's a lot to get to. So tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social. Tell all your family and friends to tune in. You won't be bored. I promise you that. And you will, I promise, understand the times better by the time we are off the air tonight. I take it each and every day, and here it is, Bella Grace. It's a powerful elixir. I've been taking it since December of 2023. Look at the hair growth. I did not have that before December 2023, and I'm very happy to have that hair growth, to be honest with you, particularly for a guy on television. But it happened, the hair growth started after I got on Bella Grace because it has high-end collagen. But the peptides are cut short, so your body absorbs 95%, whereas the average cheap collagen, your body flushes out 95%. Then it's got the cat's claw. That's the anti-inflammatory. These back problems, neck problems, they all started when we had an ice storm here and the mail was shut down for 2 weeks, and I ran out of this at the very beginning of that 2 weeks. That's when the inflammation started, and that's when the problem started. And now I'm trying to get right back to where I was before that. So I don't want to ever get off of this again. I saw what happened. And all the way, the cracking and bleeding in my hands, that started to come back in that 2 weeks I was off Bella Grace. That cracking and bleeding in my hands has gone on for years. And the only thing that ever fixed it was getting on Bella Grace. Because again, that has to do with leaky gut. And that cat's claw, that deals with inflammation. And the collagen, that helps to heal your leaky gut because your gut, I'm told, is largely the lining of it's collagen. So you got the cat's claw, the anti-inflammatory, you got the high-end collagen, and then you got the astaxanthin that crosses the brain-blood barrier, take on the free radicals. So I do this every day. Sometimes I do it twice a day, but at least every day, guys. You can't put a price on your health. I know that now. I felt such like garbage the last few weeks. I don't think I will ever discount getting up every day and feeling good again. I'm going to be thankful just to get up and feel good. I'll be thankful just to have a good night's sleep where I don't end up awake for 2 hours, 3 hours of the night because I'm in so much pain that I can't sleep. And some of you have that, right? So you know what I'm talking about. Oh, the blessing of just good health, right? You can't put a price on it. So again, my problem started with all this, like I said, when I got off this for 2 weeks. That snowstorm. So get on it. Take it each and every day. MelissaHouseBG.com. They also have the Bella Melts over here. This stimulates your body's natural GLP-1. Stimulates your body's natural GLP-1. So check it all out, MelissaHouseBG.com. You know I do the New Me every day. Swish with this. This is loaded with what's called glutathione. Glutathione detoxes your cells. In fact, some studies show it may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Now, having pain, back pain, neck pain, chronic inflammation, or whatever that creates pain, that's bad enough. But can you imagine also losing your mind due to dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, particularly at the beginning part when you know it's happening? That is going to be scary. I don't want that. I do not want that. Prevention, prevention, prevention. Bella Grace is one of those things you get on and you get to see results. Numi is one of those things where you're probably not going to see a lot of results, but maybe you don't end up with dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And you're like, glad I switched with that for years, because there's 165,000 studies on glutathione. And again, studies show it may help prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. That's at swishforlife.com. Now, happy how I've been giving this to Dolly and to Pearl, our little white schnauzer. Get this at dollyfood.shop, dollyfood.shop. Dolly was actually jumping around today while we were trying to get the box open and feed her. She loves this food. It is 100% human-grade ingredients, no artificial preservatives, complete and balanced for all life stages, made in a USDA cook in a USDA kitchen. Get it at dollyfood.shop, dollyfood.shop. Wars, rumors of wars. There's so much going on. Drones maybe attacking us by Iran. What are you going to do if the power grid goes down? What are you going to do if the cell towers go down? I would urge you go over to worldviewtalk.com. Worldviewtalk.com. Get your satellite phone. Get your bivvy so you can text through a satellite when the cell towers are down. Make sure your families have these, or your spouse who travels or is out of town a lot. Make sure you have your solar generator. I have all these things. They're at worldviewtalk.com. Worldviewtalk.com. And then finally, worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. One of the most powerful ways you can support us is simply through the foundation. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Worldviewfoundation.com. So we can keep pushing this program out for free and even putting it up online. Now, let me tell you some good news tonight real quick, guys. You remember when we said we gave an honorarium and travel expenses to Dave Gobbets to go down to Texas and to check out the Epic Center and the mosques there tied to Yasser Qadi? And he came on and gave us a report, and he gave us a signed affidavit report on what he saw, what books they were selling, their literature. Remember that? Well, I got good news for you, my friends. Our team has been contacted by the Attorney General's office in Texas, Ken Paxton, who's been on my show a few times. I've interviewed him in person at least twice. And he's been on the show here via technology. One of his investigators emailed our team. They said, we saw where you guys were talking about Epic and you have some information. Could we talk with you? Because we're doing our investigation. Our foundation sent David down there to do this worldview national security analysis and write the report, signed affidavit. And David, since we paid for it, said, can I share that with the Attorney General's office? I said, absolutely, you can. Folks, we're doing some great work. And you guys are part of that. When I say we are doing some great work, I mean we. That includes you. We couldn't be doing any of this without God's help and provision and yours. So good news tonight. What we did last year was sending Dave Gobbets down there and getting that report is now, because of the clips we've put out on social media and everything about it, caught the attention of the Attorney General's office in Texas. And we said, yes, give them that report that we paid for. So again, if you appreciate what we're doing, we need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. We got a lot to do. I hope you'll tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth Social, get all your family and friends here. I guarantee you we're going to cover some things you're not going to be here being covered on any other network tonight. Let's get started. Joining me now, Pastors J.B. Hixson and Brandon Holthaus. Guys, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
You betcha, man.
Pleasure to be with you.
You too, guys. Thanks for making time for us. All right, one of the big stories out now is FBI warns Iran aspired to attack California with drones in retaliation for war. This audience knows we've talked about our concerns of drones for some time now. My 2018 documentary, Sabotage, had the whole section about the Club K cargo missile launching system in there. I've been telling this audience that, Paul Harvey had the whole thing, If I Were the Devil, commentary he did in the 1960s, and everything he talked about, they would do, it's happened. If I were the devil, I would make sure that America got attacked in a horrific way and it was tied back to Iran so that Americans would blame Israel for getting us into the war with Iran to thus be a major gaslighting of more anti-Semitism. And the source of all suffering are the Christians, the Zionists, and the Jews. JB, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's quite the plan, but it's never about what it's about. So yeah, it's very likely that that's the hidden agenda behind all of this to bring down America ultimately. And you bring down America by, first of all, depleting all of our military resources, getting us involved in a global conflagration, and of course, all the while mind controlling all of these Gen Zers and millennials and others who are on social media all day and end up buying what it's dishing out. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting time. I'm interested in what Brandon has to say since he's out there on the West Coast.
I know, right?
They're going to hit you before they hit me, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon,
Right,
when
exactly.
when they're coming in, will you just send us a quick text?
Yeah.
I will. I'll send you a nice video of it and let you see the drones coming in, man. But no, I'll tag on to what JB is saying. It's a distraction thing because, yeah, the blame is going to be shifted to Israel, pulling us in a war. That's the Tucker Carlson mantra. But really, the issue then becomes another thing I've been concerned about is we've had open borders with the whole Joe Biden era, and we have let all these Islamic terrorists come in, and that's coming from the congressional hearing. Joe, can't remember his name. Joe something. I can't remember. I'm going off my top of my head. Anyway, he reported to Congress that we have 18,000.
Oh, you're talking about Joe Kent. Joe Kent.
Joe Kent, yes, Joe Kent. We have 18,000 terrorists that came through our border that are on our soil, that are sleeper cells for Iran, for Al-Qaeda, for the Taliban or whoever, and they're working together with different groups, and they're supposed to be waiting for a green light from Iran to do an internal attack on the United States. So it's not just drones that we need to worry about. It's the internal Islamic terrorism that's came through our borders. And here's the thing, man. Why isn't anyone doing anything about it? Because, Brandon, you and I can go back to Phil Haney, our good friend, and he was warning that we had terrorists coming through our border. He said he knew the shoe size of these terrorists. And so here we are again in the same situation. And I want to know where the FBI is. I want to know where the CIA is. But again, we have a problem internally. There's no doubt about it. And the problem is it's going to be blamed on Israel because Tucker Carlson has said, if we didn't have any friendship or alliance with Israel, then all these Islamic countries wouldn't hate us. That's not true, but that's what his mantra is.
Well, I can tell you where the FBI is. Today, March 11th, the FBI is busy making you suspicious of your family members. Here it is. Before most mass attacks, attackers often share concerning behaviors or exhibit signs that they are on a path of violence. You may be in a unique position to observe these signs in someone you know. Knowing the signs and sharing your concerns could be the key to preventing an attack of mass violence in your community. Learn more at FBI. Let's see what this is about. I wonder if there's any Islamist in here. Let's see. Or it's all going to be a bunch of white dudes. Is it all going to be a bunch of white dudes? Let's see.
Research has proven mass shooters don't snap. They are created through a series of unfortunate life events and stressors that can build upon each other. In that process, they show signs we can look for to get them help before tragedy occurs. Now we are asking for your help by watching and listening for these signs in your community that are signaling something is wrong. Being a hero doesn't always involve running towards danger. You can be a hero by knowing signs that help us prevent danger. Look for people around you who are struggling. they may have changed in a way that makes you worried. FBI BAU research shows there are common behaviors to look for. It's the coworker who feels deeply wronged and can't let it go. It's the patient's family member who holds the hospital responsible for their loved one's pain. It's a client who is going through crisis, has withdrawn from treatment, and might be thinking about self-harm. Research shows that someone is much less likely to become a shooter if someone notices these signs and tells someone. We can all be heroes simply by noticing behavior changes, caring for our communities, and saying something when we are worried. Talk through your concerns with someone you trust and make a plan for how to help the person who is struggling. Be a hero. Know the signs. Speak up.
There's your FBI. Be concerned about the Islamist who's being brainwashed into jihad at the local mosque. Be concerned when your Islamic friend or even your white Caucasian friend is starting to go to the mosque and come out saying weird things and concerning things. Be very concerned about jihadists. No. Everybody was a white dude for the most part. Did you see one Islamist? Did you see one Muslim? Did you see one picture of a mosque? Did you see the Quran? Did you hear the word jihad? Did you hear the word terrorism? Islamic terrorism? No, it's the coworker. It's the patient. Almost every one of those people was a white male, which is consistent with what the FBI has been doing now for a while. The greatest threat to America are the white males. Even if you have to make the 19 hijackers on 9/11 Caucasians. And if you think I'm joking, go back to an interview that I did with a gentleman. I can't remember his name right now, but he tracked all this. He was with a think tank, and that's what they did. And they showed that the government had even classified the hijackers on 9/11, Saudis, Arabs, as Caucasians. So you ask, Pastor Brandon, where's the government and the FBI? Well, today, March 11th, 2026, they're concerned about white males in America.
Yeah, no doubt. And Brandon, just to tag on to that, it's been revealed about the deep state. The deep state is, the FBI is part of that. The CIA is part of that. And these three-letter, federal, I don't know what you want to call them. I'll just call them the swamp. I don't know. That's, I guess, the best term for them. Nothing's really changed. Okay, we changed in a few guys. Okay, now we got Kash Patel running the FBI. But again, the same thing with the, I could say the same thing with the FBI during Joe Biden's administration. I want to know also, why isn't anyone going to jail for the Epstein files? Why are we not indicting people? I mean, for goodness sakes, Brandon. And so, yeah, nothing's really has changed, and I'm disappointed. But hey, you know, what should I expect, man? It's a deep state.
Well, the FBI is the one that's notorious for saying, oh, yeah, after a mass shooting at a gay bar or wherever else they do it. Oh, yeah, he was on our radar. Oh, yeah, he was on our radar. Oh, yeah, that guy was on our radar. So why are you telling us to report strange behavior when you have a history, as Phil Haney said, see something, say nothing? That was the name of his book.
Right.
See something, say nothing. He was blocking the jihadis from coming into America, and he got indicted for it. And was a founding member of DHS. And he was trying to stop. And he said, look, and we produced his TV show right from this desk. He said, if they had let me do my job, I could have stopped San Bernardino, Chattanooga, Little Rock. He named off all the terrorist attacks he could have stopped because he was onto that web and network. They stopped him. Right. Why? Because the government wants these attacks to occur, I believe. That's the only reason you could say they would do it, because they need the chaos. The change comes from the chaos. You cannot get the people to agree to giving up their liberty and freedom, biometrics, getting chipped, whatever it is, 15-minute cities, 24/7 surveillance. You can't get them to agree to this unless they're so scared that after you have the chaos, you have the demoralized, destabilized chaos, and then the new norm, as Yuri Bezmenov, the former KGB officer, warned about, the new norm being the socialist state. You need these terrorist attacks to implement the Orwellian dystopian system they want, JB.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, it's order out of chaos, and by order, what they mean is the New World Order, or as our friend Patrick Wood calls it, the New World Order, New World Order 2.0. But yeah, it's chaos and fear. Those are their two big weapons in their arsenal. And I'm not even sure people way down the line in some of these alphabet agency groups realize what's happening at the upper echelons. But you know, you talked about be suspicious of your family members. I am suspicious of some of my family members, but that's a story for another day. But you know, see something, say something. Well, I'll tell you what I see. I see a government that's looking in all the wrong places. I mean, like you just rehearsed there, Brandon. I mean, this is stuff we know, should know. Why aren't we doing anything about it? And we've talked about these sleeper cells for a couple of decades now, honestly, going all the way back to 9/11. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, a lot of that was just fear mongering, but we now know it's real. And it just remains to be seen what happens when they actually get activated. I think most Americans are not prepared for the utter mayhem and chaos that's going to occur when we start seeing some of this stuff happen. And again, as we've said, it's a means to an end. But that's I think our concern right now is what happens as this conflict gets worse and worse if we don't end this soon, which we hope we do. And look, I'm not saying we didn't have a reason to go in there. I think we did. We got to defend our ally Israel for both geopolitical as well as biblical reasons. But I mean, it's sort of what happens next. And when this thing gets out of control, if they decide to target the homeland here, boy, it's gonna change the narrative quite a bit.
Is Steve Witkoff Jewish? I think we established the other day he is, right? Steve Witkoff is Jewish. So, right, guys? Okay, so Steve Witkoff is Jewish.
I'm not sure either. I'm not sure.
Logan looked it up and says he is.
Okay.
You can verify it if you want, Logan. But supposedly Steve Witkoff is Jewish. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just making a point here. Obviously, Jared Kushner is. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have these two envoys working for President Trump, and supposedly it is now out that Jared is the one that convinced President Trump that we need to go do this because Iran was on the verge of striking us first. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other. What I'm saying is you can see all the pieces are lining up. If Satan is orchestrating things, and he is the God of this world, but he's only allowed to do what God allows him to do. He's on a leash. We both know that. But if God is allowing Satan to do certain things and maneuver certain things, right now, and we know from Revelation 12, eventually there is this huge crescendo of Satan making war against Israel. He's kicked out of heaven. He cannot go up into the third heaven anymore. And he's really raging here on earth. I think that's at what point he probably possesses the Antichrist. He's got to have somewhere to go. So he actually embodies the Antichrist. But you can start to see this maneuvering now, I think, of setting up Israel. And if you have two Jewish guys, Witkoff and Kushner, and they're advising Trump, Trump gets involved in a war. Now Iran is threatening to strike off our East Coast, our West Coast, maybe other places. And you can see where, how could this be any more of a movie script than you have your Jewish son-in-law who's known Benjamin Netanyahu since he was a child? I mean, again, I'm not throwing disparaging remarks to Kushner, Witkoff, President Trump. I'm just simply saying you wouldn't write a movie script like this if you were trying to write a Left Behind movie script and have a Jewish son-in-law with a Jewish co-worker, and he's known Netanyahu since he was a child, and you wouldn't write the script like this and have it be believable if you were trying to lay a script that says, here's all the ways in which people will be led down a path to blame it all on Israel and all on the Jews. Do you understand what I'm saying, Brandon?
Totally. The playbook that they're using is the Protocols of the Elders of Zion that blames the Jews for controlling the media, controlling the world domination, you name it, controlling the banking industry. And so what Tucker, the Candace, the Nick Fuenteses of the world are doing is using those types of talking points, saying it's the Jews that are bringing us into war. It's the Jews that are leading us by the nose. And so the script is written by Satan, no doubt about that, to blame the Jews. And they've always been used as a scapegoat. I mean, for goodness sake, just look at the Bible. Pharaoh used them as a scapegoat. Evil Haman used them in Persia as a scapegoat and blamed them, almost wiped them out completely. And so, Brandon, this same narrative of blame the Jews is all through the Old Testament. And now here we are in the last days, obviously, and the same script is being written. And the problem is, Brandon, the woke right and the majority of the church is not helping us disseminate the truth to these people. And so the influencers like Tucker and Candace and the woke right are overwhelming the mindset of many, many Christians and many, many conservatives. So we already know we have a problem with the left, but now we have a problem with the right going anti-Semitic. And again, I'm going to go back. If the churches were doing their job and dispelling these notions that are out there, these myths, not even from a theological standpoint, but just from a geopolitical standpoint, help people understand the necessity of Israel and how that helps us in the Middle East, and just talk about that. But they won't. They're silent. In fact, many of them, because of their replacement theology, have become hostile to Israel and actually support the wrong people. They end up supporting Hamas, for goodness sake. So we got a major problem, Brandon.
Yeah, and I have gone and looked up, and everything I'm seeing is that Steve Woodcock is Jewish. He comes from a Jewish family. In fact, let me go back to where I was, and I'll just read it to you. And I'm bringing all this up simply because it seems to be the foundations being laid for a real ramping up of the anti-Semitism beyond what we see now. And even the attack on Christians like us that support the Jewish people. Not that we agree with everything the Israeli government does, but yeah, supposedly he's Jewish. He is the son of Martin Woodcock and Lois Nee Birnbaum. Woodcock is Jewish. Okay, so there you go. I even taught you guys something now tonight. There you go.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And that just leaves more fuel to the fire because, you know, the funny thing is people want to blame Jewish people for ruling the world. The problem is they never want to blame the Gentiles. There's plenty of Gentiles. There's more evil Gentiles that are running things. But then the focus becomes George Soros. Well, he's Jewish. And Mark Zuckerberg, he's Jewish. But they never want to talk about Elon Musk or Bezos or the other guys running things. They always want to focus in on the Jews. So again, it fits the narrative they already have in their mind.
Yeah, I mean, can I just add on to that real quick?
Please.
Yeah. So, first of all, as has often been said, if the Jews have been running the world, why did it take them 1,800 years to get their homeland back? I mean, none of that makes any sense. And the protocols of the Elders of Zion, as we all know, have been widely debunked. But what strikes me here is that if you go back to October 7th, 2023, as incredulous as it sounds, if they were able to foster anti-Semitism after that event, where the barbaric, horrific things that were done to Israel, which it seems like nobody could possibly excuse, and yet we saw the rise of anti-Semitism. Wendy and I were traveling the country at that time. We visited 3 Ivy League campuses where there were big anti-Israel protests in the year after those attacks. But if they can do that then, against all logic and odds, just imagine how this latest war with Iran, which from an easily, I'm not saying this is the case, but you can easily market it as unprovoked. It would almost have been, better if Iran had struck first and we and Israel were defending. But, the enemies of Israel, the enemies of America, can make a pitch that, oh, this was unprovoked and we started it. So all I'm saying is if it was bad then, the anti-Semitism, it's just adding tons of fuel to the fire. There's no telling where this leads. And one quick example, I had someone come up to me after church 2 weeks ago, and I had made a passing comment in the midst of my message about the war and about, I made some comment about good guys and bad guys, obviously America and Iran. Well, and we know there's a lot of nuances there. There's bad people in American government doing bad things. But in general, I think it's pretty clear who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. But someone came up to me and said, I take issue that you mentioned good guys and bad guys. It's bad guys, bad guys. And my immediate response was, listen, how do you think the men and women that are defending our country, fighting for our freedoms over there in Iran right now would feel if we called them the bad guys? Look, I'm not defending every action America makes or our government or the motives for this. I understand it's way more complicated than that. But that type of mentality is catching on, as Brandon said, in the church for people that really should know better. And any positive thing that's said about Israel now, they have a visceral response because of the Fuenteses and the Carlsons and people like that. And now they don't get it. And it's a growing problem, Brandon.
I sent this article to you guys. We've been talking about it a lot. And here it is, written last December. Are young conservatives okay? Where Gen Z's taking the American right? And it goes into the algorithms feeding the young people and what's happening. And they're turning against Israel. All the problems are that of Israel. When reality is, we see that so many of our problems are related to Islam. And Islam doesn't even seem to be on the radar of these young people. And because social media, I think, is, again, the algorithms throwing them what it is they're wanting to hear about, which apparently right now is a popular thing with Candace and Tucker and Fuentes influencing them. I'm not saying that there aren't young people that aren't Christians. I think there definitely are young people that are Christians. But I would think that the number of truly committed, really born-again Christians among young people is probably a pretty small segment of the population. That traditionally the older crowd are your conservative Bible teaching, Bible going church members, right? So if the rapture would occur tonight, you're not going to have one Christian left on the planet if all three of us believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, not because we want to believe in it through escapism, but because we believe it's there and taught in the scriptures over and over, and we don't have time to go through all of it. We've done that before, but we think it's clearly there. And if that eschatology and time frame is correct, when that occurs and the church is removed and the 7-year tribulation begins, the Antichrist shows up, there's a peace treaty, the third temple, the sacrifices, and then halfway through 7 years, he breaks his treaty, turns on the Jews, the Antichrist does, starts slaughtering them in huge numbers. We got 144,000 Jewish evangelists preaching the gospel. We got an angel flying across the sky preaching the everlasting gospel. We got 2 witnesses in Jerusalem preaching the gospel. You have a huge revival going on. But that huge revival comes through just what is massive judgment by God on the earth. But if the rapture would occur tonight, there wouldn't be one Christian left on the planet. I would have to ask the question, what would be the predominant age bracket? And I would say a lot of it would be young people. There'd be a lot of young people. I don't want to say that, but postmodernism, cosmic humanism, the dominant worldviews of the day, universalism, has infiltrated that young population. So there aren't a lot of young people today that I think are truly born-again Christians compared to the older population that had the benefit of true, uncompromised Bible teaching, gospel preaching in America through radio, TV, publishing, churches, Christian schools, etc. Would you guys both agree with that?
Absolutely. I got the stats for you. The baby boomers were 45%.
Is his volume high enough, guys?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. The baby boomers, this was done by Lifeway Research long time ago. Baby boomers, there was about 45% claimed to be born-again Christians. Then my generation, Generation X, went down from 45% to 15% born-again Christians, at least professing, claim to be. Millennials went to 4%. Claim to be born-again Christian. And I don't have the stats on Gen Z, but the latest thing I heard from Brett Miller Jr., who had done some research on this, only 1% of millennials even have a biblical worldview, Brandon. And so it's just been in a descending order of decay. And so with those stats, you're totally right. Who would be left behind? A lot of the younger people.
Yeah, that's really...
Yeah,
that's really profound, Brandon. I had not thought about that, but you're exactly right. As we see in the Bible what's going to happen after the rapture, it makes total sense that the people left behind are those that are already conditioned to turn against Israel. And Brandon and I, and I'm sure you too, Brandon, can attest to the fact that all these prophecy conferences that we're going to all across the country, it's predominantly the older folks. So yeah, there's an interest in Bible prophecy prophecy and supporting Israel and defending Israel. But where are the young people? Well, they're out there listening on social media to Candace and Tucker and the like, and they're being conditioned to turn against Israel. And part of it, as I think it was Brandon that said earlier, is people don't have a solid biblical foundation. So only really with a biblical foundation can you begin to understand the significance of Israel. Otherwise, to the average person, Israel's just another country, in another part of the world like Costa Rica or something. And so they find it strange that we're all defending Israel and that Israel is such an important country. But when you see through the lens of Scripture and you see that miraculously they came back as a nation after 1,800 years, never happened before, no other nation has done that, then you begin to sort of at least, or should begin to at least scratch your head and go, what's going on here? There must be something more than just the geopolitical aspect to this. So, but yeah, that's really interesting when you think about where anti-Semitism is really catching on and how that affects prophetic aspects. Yeah.
And that's the gist of this article here from December of 2025. The number of Gen Zers, 49% of younger GOP voters believe the Holocaust was exaggerated or did not happen, as historians describe, compared to 29% of older voters. 58% of younger voters say people with sympathies toward another country, even for religious reasons, risk undermining what it means to be American, compared to 40% of older voters. Over 1/4 of younger GOP voters say they openly express racist or anti-Semitic views, compared to just 4% of older voters. Another 40% said these views should be tolerated within the political movement. 28% of younger voters said that those who hold anti-Semitic views aren't welcome and don't represent what I stand for, compared to 62% of older voters who drew the line at anti-Semitism. So again, it seems as though the younger generation is hostile, many of them, to the Bible, to Christianity, to the Jews, fine with anti-Semitism, whether they want to call it that or not. And seems to me that this is just another indication that the spiritual condition of the world is being set up for all the nations of the world will turn against Israel. And once the church is removed and the restrainer has stopped restraining, much of the population that's going to be left has already been preconditioned now. If the rapture, let's say the rapture happens tonight or a year from now or 2 years from now, that means the population has got to start being conditioned to hate Israel, right? And so you're seeing that right now. So this is one more of the signs of the time that I don't think a lot of us have thought about. And here it is. And of course, it leads me to ask what other signs of the time are out there that we haven't thought of either. But this one here today really struck me as I read this article. This is the generation that is likely to be here, and they already hate Israel. They already hate the Bible. They already hate Christ, and they're looking for a technocratic leader. Remember, a lot of these kids have been raised on iPhones, right? iPhones, iPads, and certainly the younger people coming up behind them. So these people are all tuned in to the technology. They're ready for a technocratic, I should say, global leader.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so sad when you think about people that would deny the Holocaust. I mean, it's the facts just are so overwhelming, and yet talk about deception getting worse and worse. 2 Timothy 2:13, when someone could actually give any credence whatsoever to the notion that the Holocaust didn't happen. It's like the flat Earth folks. I mean, the science just is so clear, and yet people are so prone to jump on any bandwagon and believe any lie. There have been 2 times, guys, in my life that I remember very vividly just becoming overwhelmed to the point of tears and just almost collapsing and just couldn't quite handle it. One was when the first time out of many times we went to Arlington National Cemetery, and just thinking about the sacrifice that people have paid for this country and what it's come to today. But the other time was the first time we went to the Holocaust Museum, and it is it's unbelievable. But, Satan has always attacked, going all the way back to the garden, Genesis 3:15, Genesis 12, the whole Israelology that we see throughout scriptures and throughout biblical history. And so it shouldn't surprise us that the closer we get to the triumphant return of Christ to establish the kingdom someday, that the devil is going to set his crosshairs right on Israel, and in preparation for once more trying to defeat the ultimate seed of Israel, Jesus Christ. And so I guess up here we know it, but it breaks your heart to see young people believing such lies.
Yeah, and I'll tag on to that. There's two other factors I'll throw in there that's fueling this. You got not only the lack of foundation theologically from the churches, but history is being written on Israel. For instance, when they come back into the land, and the whole Palestinian issue, and so you don't have people in the younger generation that don't even know what the phrase means, to the river to the sea. They have no idea what they're even talking about. So you have a rewriting of history. So these younger generations don't know history, and they don't know theology. Now let me add the psychological aspect to it, Brandon. A lot of psychologists and counselors, even in the biblical counseling realm, and I'm in that, call the younger generation by, I know this is a blanket statement and there's exceptions to the rule, wounded narcissists. And let me explain how that fuels itself into anti-Israel. When these young people are called wounded narcissists, it means that they were told by their parents that they're wonderful, even though they have never achieved anything in their life. And this is where everyone gets a trophy, for coming in last, that type of mentality. And then at the same time, their parents gave them over to be in daycare from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So they were sending mixed signals. They were told they were wonderful for achieving nothing, but at the same time, they were jettisoned by their parents into the daycare world, where it sent them, they were wounded. Why do they reject me? And so what ends up happening with a wounded narcissist is you have entitlement. Okay, so this comes into this economy issue. The economy is not doing very well. These young people can't afford housing. They can't afford cars. They barely can make ends meet. And so they're looking as a wounded narcissist, not to blame themselves and how can I get better, but they're looking to blame someone for their economic condition. And here's where the Tucker and the Nick Fuenteses come in and say, why are we spending millions of dollars on these wars in the Middle East when we have people that can't afford housing here? Bingo. That resonates with the wounded narcissist who feels he's entitled to housing, to a car, working at Taco Bell. So you have a weird combination going on. It's really a perfect storm, Brandon.
Let me go to another issue, and that is we're really seeing the meltdown of the conservative movement, the MAGA movement. We've brought this up now. Confirmed speaker for CPAC is going to be Steve Bannon. Let me refresh this and see what's the latest on this. How many people like this? All right. So this has now been seen by 823,000 people, but it's only got 277 likes. Okay. Only 277 people have liked it, but it's been seen by 823,000.
Something's not right.
Right? So why on earth would they book him? I mean, the confusion inside the MAGA world, the Trump administration, sadly, the spiritual confusion, the people, of course, Bannon was a part of the first Trump administration. This confusion, I'm telling you, this is orchestrated to destroy, just as they destroyed the Tea Party, the powers that be, global, foreign, domestic, are destroying the MAGA movement. And what's not being destroyed is being used to set up something that I think, frankly, from the digital Gaza, the 15-minute city of Gaza, and all they're doing there, and the tech bros, it's going to be something we look back on. And I think, I hate to say it, and I said it before Trump was elected the second term, and I wanted him to win because I didn't want Kamala, but I said, I'm afraid we might end up looking back if he goes with these tech bros the way we do in the George W. Bush administration.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Bannon, I that just is so perplexing to me. I've talked a lot about him in some of my recent stuff. I played a video of him at a couple of conferences I did in the last month, one in Florida and one in Georgia, where right after Trump's second election, he was being interviewed, and he goes on for 10 minutes insisting that Trump is still going to be president in 28. And the journalists were like, how could this be? The Constitution violate. He goes, just trust me. We're going to make it happen. He's going to be the president in 28. And then you sort of correlate that to the dark MAGA movement, the neo-reactionary movement, the Kurdish Arvins of the world that want to install a monarchy. They think that's the only way to fix this country. And then I correlate that to like Trump, strangely, during the election, before he was elected for the second term, saying to a TPUSA audience that if they'll just vote one time, they'll never have to vote again. You won't have to vote next time. I don't know what they're planning, or really even who's planning it. But I was talking to Patrick Wood last time. I know he's a good friend of both of you guys and on your show all the time, Brandon. But he brought up something that I had never thought about that is really intriguing to me. And he goes, what if if the Lord tarries, we don't have the rapture. What if the midterms are disastrous and the Democrats take full control and they impeach Trump? And for the first time in history, he's actually convicted and therefore ousted. And he flees to another country where he has a lot of interest. Think Board of Peace, think some of these other things that he's done. And then from there, as things unravel with who knows what, war, terrorist attacks, whatever, some prevailing group or interest group ends up installing him as a regional monarch. I mean, these days that there's so much chaos out there, it's hard to immediately dismiss any theory, and should have been discredited by any thinking conservative a long time ago. But once again, he's being propped up.
Our friend Annie Cyrus was telling me last year. Last year, she was telling me I would not be surprised if President Trump doesn't retire to the Middle East.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, that's wow. I mean, because it's hard to picture a monarch the way the technocrats want. The whole North American technate and this installing a king. It's hard to picture how that fits with America, with our history, with even in the situation we're in today, with a lot of the problems we have. It doesn't fit.
Well, if you were also having your assets attacked by New York and all these states were going after your assets, wouldn't you move a lot of your assets out of the country? Wouldn't you start developing in Dubai and the Gaza and all the developments they're doing, Saudi Arabia? Move more and more of your assets and developments out of the U.S. into the Middle East, where your poll numbers are probably pretty high over there, certainly with the leaders, and retire over there with all your assets over there. I mean, frankly, I couldn't blame him if he was moving his assets out of the U.S., anticipating that they're going to come back into power and then try to take all my stuff again, right? But I go to the Trump boys. They must know something is up. This is over at worldviewreport.com today, your daily aggregated news site. Trump's sons invest in companies vying to fill gaps in U.S. drone industry. I wonder what they know that we don't know. Are we going to be using more drones in wars or what? Pastor Brandon?
Yeah, I think that's the new weapon of warfare. We're even using drones against Iran, and drones don't need human pilots, and that's going to be the new warfare. I mean, you can even send smaller drones, killer drones, and you guys have probably seen these things where they can go and just hit someone in the forehead and explode it and kill the person instantaneously. And I think that's the new warfare is not going to be sending soldiers, it's just sending drones. And look, I can see what these guys are doing. Look, there's plenty of people that always profiteer off war. You always have that going on in any situation. And Trump's boys, I think, are seeing this. And again, we've talked about this, even, Steve Witkoff and even Jared Kushner being involved in taking money from the Middle East. So it seems like they're involved in this in some play, or I don't know I don't want to get conspiratorial, but something's going on. How come they make moves like this, knowing what the next step is? It's like Nancy Pelosi and her husband being the greatest stock market investors, because they always had insight on what was going on in the next move. And I think the same thing you're seeing around Trump. The people are profiteering off this thing. So, but anyway, from 30,000 bird's eye view, what's happening? Well, they're dividing the MAGA base, and they know that that is a major support, not only of Donald Trump, but just conservatism. And look, they know they have to get rid of conservatism. And the way they're doing it is splitting MAGA with guys like Steve Bannon and the rest of these other, I guess the term would be woke MAGA. I don't know, woke right. I don't know what you want to use for them. But to me, that's what's really happening. And what is Satan's tactic? It's always divide and conquer, divide and conquer. And so that's what I think we're seeing too, even with the Trump administration and the supporters of it.
Yeah. Yeah, if I can add on to just dividing the MAGA, that's obviously a huge part of it. But I think even more specifically, they're trying to marginalize the church, because conservatism as a philosophy, really kind of left the building some time ago, frankly. I mean, we've been pro-homosexual, pro-abortion, those types of things for a long time. That Overton window has shifted. And yes, MAGA has helped bring some of that back, but still, the conservatism has been kind of long ago marginalized. But what hasn't been is the church. And so what they're trying to do is get Christians to just be completely marginalized. And I think that's the great last days of apostasy that I've talked about. But I don't know if you guys saw, speaking of drones, my resident technologist sent me this week, the Chinese bird drones. I mean, that was amazing. They look exactly like birds. You could see a flock of them flying over the mountains here in Colorado, and you'd think you're looking at birds, but they are drones. And so it's getting to be where, just as in the world at large, it's hard to differentiate reality from a lie. It's going to be hard to even recognize drones, because China has now come out with one that is perfectly replicates an actual bird, and it's actually a drone that's a weapon. So yeah, this is definitely a new day of warfare for sure.
And President Trump speaking in Kentucky this afternoon. Here's what the president had to say. Listen.
Record 400 million barrels of oil from various national petroleum reserves around the world, which will substantially reduce the oil prices as we end this threat to America and this threat to the world. We don't want to leave early, do we? We got to finish the job, right? Over the past 11 days, our military has virtually destroyed Iran.
All right. So yesterday it was pretty much over. Today is we don't want to leave too soon. So I don't know. Of course, I'm sure Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing that you can leave if you want. I'm not leaving. I think Benjamin Netanyahu is, I'm hearing from our reporter on the ground over in Israel, Aaron Lavarco, that this has got several weeks to go. Closing comment, guys?
Well, the thing I'm looking at is whether or not who's going to take the spot of the Ayatollahs. And we're going to have the same thing that happens again with another Ayatollah or another mullah or another cleric or another crazy jihadist running Iran. Or we're going to get a pro-Western type of guy like maybe Reza or who knows. I don't know. But that's the key on that is what I'm looking at, even from a prophetic standpoint, because I know in the future, Iran turns on Israel. And they attack Israel in the Gog of Magog invasion. And so I'm curious, and I'm patiently watching who is going to replace this regime once we have done this. And again, if we don't get the right people in there, then look out, because they're going to be trying to seek revenge on Israel and the United States.
JB?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm watching for is, the longer this goes on, the greater the chance of some rogue element happening, right? I mean, there's the plan from the bad guys and their plan of sort of geopolitically for the world. Then there's the actual surface level plan between the United States and Israel defending themselves against Iran, the actual base level. But then there's also some rogue guy that gets mad at somebody for something. And based on the report we started the show with tonight from California, maybe that's some rogue element in America, or maybe it's some Middle Eastern figure that gets upset about something. And people go off script from the Luciferian script, and this thing could get in difficult in a hurry. But I'll leave with a verse here. Proverbs 21:1 says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, like the rivers of water. He turns it wherever he wishes." Let's not forget, I think it was Brandon that said it earlier, look, God's got a plan. The scripture is very clear on this. We know where this is headed. Let's keep our eyes fixed on the author and finisher of our faith. If you don't know the Lord, absolutely, that's step number one. Place your faith in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who died and rose again for your sins. But for those believers that are watching, keep your eyes fixed on the Lord. There's nothing to be afraid of. We know God's in control, but certainly be aware and be prepared.
Indeed. J.B. Hixson is at notbyworks.org, notbyworks.org. And Brandon Holthaus, what's your website, Brandon?
You can go to brandonholthaus.com or rockharborchurch.net.
Excellent. Thank you guys for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Betcha.
God bless.
God bless
and
you.
We'll be right back after this very short break.
About 30 years ago, I had the opportunity to go into the Amazon rainforest and study their medicinal treasures, and the one that really captured my imagination was cat's claw. After all the discussions and interviews with the locals, I went back to the lab and I found that it was the most potent inhibitor of a switch called NF-kappa B. NF-kappa B is normally dormant, and with oxidative stress, it migrates to the nucleus and it regulates thousands of genes involved in inflammation, turning some on, turning some off. And if you suppress NF-kappa B, keep it inactive, which is what cat's claw does, then you're able to temper down all of that stress on the body. So cat's claw, I've been using it ever since. So the scientist actually takes his own medicine.
Joining me now is our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron Lavarco. Aaron, during radio show today from 1 to 2 Central, my Red Alert app was going off like crazy. You guys are getting hammered. What is going on the ground over there?
Hi, Brennan. Yeah, in the last short time, about an hour, about 100 rockets, projectiles, missiles, drones have been fired, not only from the north, but from the south as well. So it seems that there's a joint cooperative attack with Iran in the south and Hezbollah in the north. The main attacks and the more serious ones are in the north because our border is so close. And I've just been informed updates that all the residents in the north are on the highest alert and that they've been told not to go far away from their homes or bomb shelters. They don't have to go inside, but they have to stay close. And as I say, at the same time, the Iranians, they're firing from Iran towards us in the south. There is word that the Houthis may end up joining in now. Brandon, from what I've been reading and surveying today, it seems that this is really the last chance that Iran and the proxies have. And the main reason is because in the north, Hezbollah, they will no longer be able to reload because it's the Iranians who feed them weapons. Unless they've got some kind of way to get stuff under the ground, they cannot reload. The Iranians, they are the ones that provide for them. So this could be, like the captain going down with the ship, that they may try, or Samson going down with the temple. They may try anything and everything they can as a last effort to cause as much damage as possible. But all of the northern cities, Metula, Kiryat Shmona, Nahariya, the Golan, all the sirens are going off. So it's on very high alert. Thankfully, I've read only one place called Carmiel in the north western Galilee that was hit. A big factory was hit up there. There we go, Upper Galilee. I believe that would probably be That's a house. That's a private house. Could be in the same area. I'm reading in an area called Carmiel. Huge factory was hit. Be that as it may, this is war. This is what we expected. But Hezbollah, by entering in, military strategists are saying they made a wrong tactical decision. The timing, they decided to get involved, and what it's done, Brandon, it's allowed us to go in to South Lebanon to push back the border, just like we did in Syria, just like we've done in the Gaza Strip. We are actually taking over more land. This is what happened in the 1967 war, which we didn't start, but as a result, we ended up taking over Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. We took over the Golan Heights. This time, we've taken over Gaza. We've taken over Mount Hermon in the Golan. We are now taking over South Lebanon. Now, really strategically, the Lebanese government are getting involved, but they are wanting to side with Israel. They have basically put their cards on the table. If Hezbollah doesn't get crushed, this is going to come back big time on the Lebanese government because they're not as strong as Hezbollah. But I think they have made a calculated move. They're siding with Israel, and just like we did for the Druze, just like we did for the Kurds, we're going to come and help the Lebanese people. This is liberation time for them as well. So while the war is raging, these are incredibly exciting times.
Well, I don't know if you've heard here in the U.S., the FBI is now warning that Iran wants to attack California with drones in retaliation for war. I mean, this is exactly what you're going through. Now, of course, we've been mostly concerned here in this broadcast center with drones coming to us via the IRGC from like Mexico. We've been warning about that for several years. After we saw IRGC footage of them releasing drones in what looked like the deserts of the Southwest to try to mock that up maybe. But now we have the FBI warning about California. I don't know if California is really the threat or not. I'm still more concerned, frankly, about an attack coming out of Mexico. But anyway, this is what you guys live with all the time.
We do. And we've lived like this for years, for decades, 47 years. And hopefully this is coming to an end. But Brandon, going back to America, as much as I would hate to see terror come on America, this could be something that wakes people up to the Islamic threat, that the jihadist Islam is out there. They're wanting to destroy. And like I said, even we've talked about this a number of times, October the 7th, we needed that to really wake us up.
Right now in America, most Gen Zers, there's an article that's now going viral today among conservative circles from last December 2025 entitled, "Are Young Conservatives Okay?" where Gen Z is taking the American right. And it's showing what percentage of these Gen Zers are anti-Israel. They are being led to believe, and it's being largely driven by social media, they're being led to believe that the source of all suffering is really Israel. At a time when we should be united against a shared enemy, social media has convinced a lot of Americans and a lot of young people that the problem is Israel and the Jews. And at a time when the Islamists are rising in America, getting elected to local, state, and federal offices, they are taking over, building mosques, like crazy. I mean, this has got to be largely being driven by algorithms from China, Iran, Russia, all these groups that are united together. Because as I keep reminding the audience, don't forget, Yasser Arafat was trained and driven by the KGB, of the leader of the PLO, Yasser Arafat.
Yeah. I've seen videos of people being interviewed in the streets, being asked, what is the river to the sea? What is Zionism? They haven't got a clue.
No.
They haven't got a. So you put it right when you said they're being led to believe. And we need to get to the root of why they're being led, who is leading them to believe that. By the way, did you see there was an Israeli guy beaten up? I think it was in California or New York. He was in a cafeteria. Some three guys heard him speaking in Hebrew, and they beat him up. And they said, keep out of Iran. Yeah, very disturbing.
All right. There's also, I saw this earlier today, Aaron. I didn't know if it was legit, but you're telling me it is legit. Here is radio exchange between Israeli and American pilots. Listen to this.
Mobile 97. Go for 97. It is a great honor for us to fight with you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. Likewise, gentlemen. Please be safe out there. Strike hard. See ya.
There you go.
Mobile 97.
There you go.
I love that.
That makes you smile, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we have a incredible talk about trust. If you've got one little hint of mistrust there, that is not a good place to be going out to fight. If you have the kind of trust that we have right now with the Americans and they with us, that is powerful. Unity, going out to war, that warms my heart seeing videos like that.
It does. And yet the red alert app's still going off.
It is correct. Drone intrusion sirens sound along the Lebanese border. That's in the north.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, in closing, also tonight, we're reporting over at our Worldview Report website, worldviewreport.com, that Iran, I think, also is looking at this as an economic war, keep the energy prices high. We've seen about a 25% spike in gasoline, 40%, I'm reading, in diesel. So this is as much an economic war as anything else, I think. And Iran wants to keep that going with, I guess, laying mines there in the Strait of Hormuz.
That's right, Brandon. And this is another part of jihad. It's called a economic jihad. If they can't win militarily, they will try social jihad by getting into universities like the Qataris. And now it's an economic jihad. And you know what? We saw that about 6 months ago. One missile, Brannon, was fired over to our airport. Because one missile was fired, all of the air companies canceled their flights. Cost us billions in flights and work. This is what they're doing. And they're watching our news. They're keeping note on what's going on in our news. There we go. There's missiles, projectiles, drones.
That's all just within the last few hours, folks.
Yeah, we could have an interesting night. My next concern would be on the Houthis, whether they're going to get involved. By the way, Brandon,
that would be Yemen, correct?
That is Yemen, correct. A third of Yemen are ruled by the Houthis. The news came out that the newly elected leader has been seriously injured. He was in a place where it was attacked, and he's got, I believe, wounds in his leg, and was it his eye or his chest? I can't remember, but it looks quite serious.
Well, in my Worldview Report tonight, I pointed out that some experts are saying he is thinking he's paving the way for the 12th Imam, that he wants to keep this stirred up and go apocalyptic and maybe even sacrifice himself and his entire country if that's what brings the Mahdi.
Well, that's what we talked about the other night. And for those viewers who aren't aware of that, the 12th Imam is an Islamic belief that when Muhammad was alive, there were 11 successors, and the 12th successor, who lived in about the 12th century, he was 6 years old, and he mysteriously disappeared. They believe that one day he will come back, but before he comes back, there has to be chaos on the earth to usher him in. And this is what motivates them, Brandon. Do you know Tony Blair, when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister of Britain, he wrote an article about it, about this 12th Imam Mahdi theology, eschatological, which we talked about the other night, their end time belief. So this could well be him trying to stir up, get chaos in not just in Israel, but in all of the Middle East to try and usher that in. I personally, I think this is seriously backfiring against him. And Donald Trump, by striking against the new leader, he's made it very clear negotiations are off the table. There's no more negotiation until the regime is done. The war will continue, and it is continuing, and it's continuing successfully.
Before we go, the New York Post is reporting this headline this evening. Doomsday plane spotted flying low over California as Iran tensions rocket. The Doomsday plane, the huge Boeing E-6B Mercury, which is the president's emergency operations hub if nuclear war breaks out, posted over Fresno over the weekend. Air bosses said it was conducting approaches at the site and spent 2 hours doing mock landings, leaving onlookers stunned. And it goes into the briefing room, the conference room, communications, the rest area. This is, again, one of these planes that looks very similar to the 747 that's that is Air Force One, but any plane presence on is Air Force One. But this one, of course, is for, as you see in the sketch here, the president to get on, or a team of people to get on, to keep communications going. I don't think the Doomsday plane, as it's called, and I'm sure I guarantee you there's more than one. It doesn't only have to be for the president. It also they could have them for various high-level government people to have your secession of government continue. Very interesting days and times we're living in. We're also getting reports that purportedly Trump administration officials, some of them are asking their bunker builders when their personal bunkers will be finished. So we already know high-profile people the last few years have been ordering. There have been reports the last few weeks, whether they're true or not, but there have been reports that even some of the people in the Trump administration have built personal bunkers. Of course, that would not be a shock when you figure that some of the people in the Trump administration are multi-millionaires and some of them billionaires. But when those guys start building bunkers,
Hey, the Bible says, blow the shofar, blow the trumpet. It's time for war. And may this wake up the people of America. May they turn to the Lord as their only hope for eternal salvation.
Amen to that. Aaron Navarco, lighttothenationsministry.com. Aaron, thank you. Be safe, my friend.
Thanks, Brandon.
Aaron Navarco checking in tonight as the rockets and missiles are raining down in the drones. By the way, again, if you appreciate these reports we get from him, we sent him another love offering yesterday. We send them regularly because a workman is worthy of his hire. So if you appreciate the fact that we have built up a network here with great broadcasters and programming, including our own reporter, reporting exclusively for us on the ground in Israel, we have to have your support. So if you appreciate Aaron, you can show your appreciation by going to worldviewfoundation.com and making a contribution, because that's the fund of which we then take out those funds and send to him for love offerings. Worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. We'll be right back after this very short break. Go to worldviewtalk.com. Get your satellite phone like I have, because you know what? China is in on our power grid. That is a matter of proven fact. If you want to have communications with your loved ones, your family, your children, maybe your spouse travels, maybe you have a child away at college, you want communication should the grid go down. That's why you need a satellite phone, worldviewtalk.com. But look what else they have. They also have solar generators. I have one of their solar generators. I have the Delta Echo 400, a solar generator. So I can, of course, charge my satellite phone. I can run my coffee pot. I can run my whole house if I want to. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com, or use that number, 1-866-738-3224. They have very friendly operators that will explain to you their products but you can explain to them what it is you're desiring to acquire. How much electricity are you wanting to generate with this solar generator? Well, they'll tell you what size you need. Worldviewtalk.com or 1-866-738-3224. Joining me now is James Lindsay. It's been a while since he's been on the broadcast, but we're glad to have him back. He is a anti-communist warrior, and we appreciate him. James, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Brandon. It's good to see you.
You too, my friend. All right. I want to go to an article we talked about on radio today. I think it was your Twitter feed that inspired it, and I went and found it. It was actually written, as you know, in December of last year. And here's the headline: Are young conservatives okay? Where Gen Z is taking the American right. And I've been talking about it all day. This is a very lengthy article. Goes into Charlie Kirk, what he was talking about and calling for before his assassination. Then it goes into all the polling when it comes to the young generation Z, how many of them today see Israel as the problem. And I then found it very interesting on how it dealt with social media. And we know how the algorithms are throwing so much at these young people. And I've said it, and I'm going to say it again. At a time when we should all, as Americans, be uniting with Israel and Jews to fight our shared enemy of the red-green axis, the Marxist and the Islamist, it would be now. But instead, it seems as though enemies in America, people who are either blackmailed, paid off, bought off, enemies domestic and enemies foreign, are working double time, maybe algorithms. I would think obviously Iran, China, North Korea, Russia. And I keep reminding our audience that Yasser Arafat was trained by the KGB to be the head of the PLO. So I'm thinking that we have a lot of enemies, foreign and domestic, that are running algorithms and social media and podcasts and whatnot to turn Americans not only against America, but to turn Americans against our shared ally, where we share a lot of information, a lot of intelligence, a lot of technology with each other to fight the shared enemy, which is Islam. And instead, what we're being told is Islam is peace. Jihad is an internal struggle, that it's Islamophobia, to talk the way that Brandon House and Andy Cyrus and Usama Dakdok and Sharam Hadian and Aaron Levarco, and maybe you spend a lot of time talking about Islam as well, that we're Islamophobic, xenophobic, other things, when in reality, this is coming at a perfect time because the Islamists are taking over America. They're winning in huge elections, local, state, and federal. They're passing laws in some of these states to make hate crimes for speaking out against Islam, like they are in the UK, where you can barely say anything truthful about Islam over there without getting literally arrested. This seems awfully coordinated timing by the enemies of America and Europe to pull this off and turn Americans against not only their own country, but one another and against our ally, as the Jews and Americans are all going to face extinction from the same group, the Marxists and the Islamists. But people seem to be oblivious to this psychological operation, which is clearly organized because partly of the veracity of it, the volume of it, but the timing, James.
That's right. Yeah, the timing is very telling, right? When did all of this really arise? You can, if you actually go to Israel and talk to people in Israel, they all say the same thing, is that they were attacked on October 7th and the propaganda began on October 8th, meaning 23, of course. And this tidal wave of propaganda that's designed to get Americans skeptical of Israel, fighting with each other about the role of Israel in our country and in the world, and to fight about everything else. Like we've got right now some kind of online war of Protestants versus Catholics that I've never seen in American history before. You got everybody fighting with everybody. You got all these things. And like you said, you got this article coming up back in December in Deseret, which is a Utah publication, a local publication there, talking about the rise of these narratives within the Gen Z, which I think are honestly the biggest target. I think the biggest target is to get our children, particularly young adults and older teenagers, not so much little kids right now. And the goal is to get them to start questioning the values and the principles of their parents' generation as conservatives and as Christians. And that's pretty clear by the way the statistics are showing. Most of the older people are not going along with these narratives, and most of Gen Z seems to be bending in that direction. It's still a little bit hopeful, but it's pretty scary. And I gave a speech recently on a stage to about 500 conservatives, and it was a very short speech. I only had a few minutes to talk. And I talked about how one of the things I mentioned was how during Hitler's rise, one of the things that he would do, like when he was taking over, marching east, through the Sudetenland and so on, is he would offer free summer camps. So all of these parents, would send their kids off to these Nazi summer camps to get a month or two of, freedom. And the kids would come back completely indoctrinated to Nazism. And so Hitler's agenda was to brainwash the young people so that they would go back and either brainwash their parents or turn their parents in, rat on their parents, so that he would first gain followers of adults through their children, and he would get children to rat out their own parents when he couldn't gain a follower. And this was what I said to this crowd was, this is one of the ways that the Nazis gained access to a lot of people for their movement was through their kids. But we don't have to have summer camps anymore because we have the internet. And these kids spend a lot of time listening to podcasts. They spend a lot of time watching reels on Instagram and on TikTok that are and other platforms that are actually clips from these podcasts a lot of times, and 45-second blurbs of some propaganda idea. And they're getting their thoughts twisted up and taken in different directions. And what happens then is parents are put in the same bind we saw as on the left. In the left, we'd have a kid come home and say, "Mom, I think I'm trans," and now the family's in a bind. They either have to affirm it or they're now at war with their child. And as we've seen, many states, California, for example, Colorado, some other states, have made it a crime to try to parent your child through that. You have to just affirm and go with them. Well, the same thing here. I hear from parents almost every day. My kids are listening to this, they're listening to that. Maybe it's Nick Fuentes, maybe it's Tucker Carlson, maybe it's Candace Owens, maybe it's some other people. And they're repeating Nazi ideology. They're repeating racist and anti-Semitic things. They suspect Israel's at the bottom of every problem in the world. What do I do? And it's the same dynamic. What do you do is it's extremely difficult. If you try to parent your kids, they're going to reject you. They've set the price of engagement at agreeing with them. If you don't agree with them, you're part of the problem. So this is a very toxic situation. We're in a lot of trouble, and we see Gen Z getting heavily influenced by these propaganda campaigns that are targeting them very vigorously.
This article goes on to state that this finding was reinforced by a poll, results published recently by the Manhattan Institute, which showed that 23% of Republican presidential voters under 50 view Israel as a liability, pulling the U.S. into unnecessary wars, antagonizing Muslim states, compared to 6% of GOP voters over 50. The article goes on to talk about the influence of Candace Owens and Tucker. It says here under why Gen Z is turning against Israel. This has also been the experience of Lexi Langley, a grassroots engagement director at Americans for Prosperity, who, like Wilson, is an alumnus of BYU. Langley, age 23, said she has seen an acceleration among Gen Z toward Carlson and Owens and even Fuentes. The Manhattan Institute poll found that Carlson is viewed favorably by 65% of younger GOP voters. Ben Shapiro, was viewed favorably by 64%, and Owens viewed favorably by 62% of those under 50, but just 42% of those over 50. Predictably, the conservative cohort attracted to Carlson and Owens, who center a large portion of their content on criticizing U.S.-Israel relations, have become more interested in and more negative toward Israel, according to Langley. Quote, all of my friends, Israel is the very first thing, of all my friends, Israel is the very first thing that they want to learn about and understand, because it does go back to America first, end quote, Langley said. Quote, I, in fact, have not talked to one Gen Z conservative that has been pro-Israel. everybody I've talked to is questioning Israel, end quote. Langley denies that Gen Z animus toward America's Middle East ally is a sign of growing anti-Semitism. It reflects a belief that Israeli influence has contributed to corruption among our political leaders, a feeling that has only grown amid coverage of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, Langley said. That's very interesting because the leaders are now somehow corrupted by Israel. Hello, are these young kids not aware of what has been reported, $40 billion by Qatar to U.S. universities? Are they not aware of reported Qatar and Iranian money to influencers and podcasters in the United States of America? Are they not aware of CARE? No, they're not. Are they aware that CARE was started in 1994 and is a subsidiary, I believe, clearly, of Hamas, started in 1928, which was behind the October 7th, 2023 attacks of killing and raping and murdering, dismembering 1,200 Jews and then kidnapping many more? These kids don't have enough history because we were teaching them everything but history and worldviews and world religions. And so they have no clue. And they think that somehow Israel has spent a bunch of money corrupting the politicians. Now, I'm sure that some of these Jewish groups and Israeli groups spend money in America, AIPAC and others. But that is a drop in the bucket when you compare it to the Islamic money. And yet, notice the distraction. Jeffrey Epstein. Are they not asking about the relationship between Tucker Carlson and Qatar? Didn't he want to buy a house there? Didn't he say, Hamas, I think that's a political organization. I don't know. These kids, here's the problem. These kids don't know what they don't know, right? And so they're being brainwashed in a vacuum where they have no information other than what is served up to them by the media, by the uniparty, or whoever it is doing this inside the GOP, these influencers, and then, of course, by the algorithms. But every time you read one of these articles, you're like, wait a minute. Your last concern should be the small amount of money that any group, Jewish group, Israeli group is giving in America to people when you compare it to the Islamic money. And the last I read, the Jews are not interested in having the girls wear burqas. They're not interested in throwing homosexuals off buildings. They're not interested in killing Christians and Jews. They're not interested in telling the women you can't have an education, you can't drive. The Islamists, they're the ones doing the female genital mutilation. They're the ones whipping women and beating women. So these kids are so ignorant. They're so foolish.
Well, the young lady that you quoted from the article says it kind of exactly. She says, of all of my friends, they're most interested in Israel now because of America First, and they're all skeptical. What they don't want, they're not actually interested in learning the facts about Israel. They're interested in learning facts that confirm the bias that they've been given through this propaganda of why Israel's a problem. Like, for example, the distraction of the Jeffrey Epstein aspect where it comes to Israel. Like, again, what do they know? What do they not know? I had a guy literally in the streets of Manhattan stop me the other day and say, oh my gosh, can I get a picture with you? I'm like, okay, cool, a fan or whatever. And he's like, why won't you tell the truth about Israel? Didn't you see that Epstein has worked with Israel? And I said, well, who's he worked with in Israel according to the files? And he says, well, Ehud Barak. And I'm like, do you know who Ehud Barak is? And the guy's like, he was in Israel. And I'm like, that's not enough, man. That's like saying that, the United States is Epstein land because Bill Clinton's in the files. The guy has a political faction. He disagrees with a lot of the people. He's a proponent of the two-state solution. He's effectively almost like their Obama. And so what they're hearing is selective pieces of information, and they don't have the relevant context to process it. But the problem isn't even that. The problem is that they don't want to process it. They want to be confirmed in their biases because these biases are serving their ability to fit in with their group. Like you said, there's the algorithm. Everything that they see is confirming the view that they already have. So anything that's coming outside of that just gets wrapped into the conspiracy. Like this gentleman in New York City grabs me by the arm, and I'm like, look, I am telling the truth about Israel. And he goes, no, I understand. You have a family, you have a career, you have to protect it. So there's no way to break through to this kind of a mindset. And I'm like, sir, I destroyed my career telling the truth about Israel. But what I say is that Israel is our friend and our ally and is taking a tremendous risk on the behalf of the entire free world to fight these enemies that we have in the Middle East. And that's what actually damaged my career, was telling that truth about Israel. But it's not what you want to hear. And he says, well, I understand. You've just got to protect your career. And so it's just a closed ecosystem. And the algorithms are designed for whatever sets of reasons. From what I understand, the algorithms are primarily, it's not that the algorithm is bought off or that the social media platform is bought off, though we saw, with old social media, that was certainly a possibility, or that it's controlled by the deep state or something like this, but rather that these extra state actors have very sophisticated techniques to game the algorithm, to get themselves on top. They know how to create networks of influencers who share, cross-post, to amplify with bots, to do so in the first 10 minutes of posting so that it gets what's called algorithmic velocity, so that they make sure that they're at the top of every algorithm. The algorithm doesn't distinguish between positive engagement and negative engagement, when people are liking something and when people are engaging with it because they don't like it. And so what's happening is this stuff is just, it's like an irritant also that's just ratcheting it higher and higher and higher and higher. So you're absolutely right. They don't know what they don't know. They don't want to know what they don't know. They want to see these issues in terms of the things that they already believe, because they have adopted a conspiratorial belief system that allows them to vent the frustrations and challenges of their own experience into a scapegoat, which is in this case Israel. But they don't understand that they're doing the bidding with tons and tons and tons of money behind it of our enemies: Iran, Qatar, Russia, China, you name it. They're doing the bidding of their enemies. Luckily, President Trump dropping the strike on Iran, and doing the Midnight Hammer again last July, really has, kind of showed these people out to be the, not just fraudsters that they are, but the propagandists defending that regime. And it's shocking people to the point where now everybody's talking about it. So I'm hoping that the conservative immune system is going to kick in, and we're going to be able to start reaching to some of these young people and helping them understand the history, the geopolitics, the situation that they absolutely don't understand. And the fact just that they've been propagandized is the place to start, I think.
What do you make of this? CPAC has confirmed Steve Bannon. Now, full disclosure, we produced out of our control room Steve Bannon's broadcast for 3 years. A lot has come out about Steve in that 3 years, right? This whole interview, multiple hours interviewing Epstein, that's all just really, really troubling to me, concerning to me, odd. And many other things about him that have come out are very concerning. Roger Stone had dinner with him a week ago, tomorrow night. Roger has no shortage of things to say, and you can follow his Twitter feed and find that. Why on earth would CPAC book Steve Bannon to speak right now? And where is Steve Bannon on the whole position of Israel? Is he feeding this? Is he crossed into the line of Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson?
It looks very much like he has. Actually, I've done things with Steve Bannon in the past, too. I've appeared with him on stages. I've sat in for programs with him a couple of times. I was on the America Fest stage with Steve one time at Charlie's event. We did a podcast with Charlie and Steve and me and Tim Pool. So I've appeared with Steve, and I was, I generally was a kind of fairly distant supporter of Steve. I was, pro some of Steve's stuff, and his messaging started to, in my opinion, go off. A year and a half ago, I started to be skeptical of the kind of messaging he was putting out. He started to take on a much more radical bent. He started to support people that I was starting to see as troublemakers or problems. He started to counter signal against some of the things President Trump was doing that I actually support. And, it was just kind of this snowball of bad news. He started to take positions of skeptical of Israel, saying that, in fact, the Christians should go over and take over the Holy Land and run the place to get the Jews out of control and to keep the Muslims from taking control. And then the ties to Alexander Dugin, this weird Russian philosopher with the multipolarity theory, started to come out more and more clearly. And then, a couple of months ago, the Jeffrey Epstein connection comes out, and it's just become absolutely clear that, it's one thing if you're trying to represent somebody like Epstein as an attorney. Everybody is entitled to legal representation, and if an attorney wants to take that on, that's fine. It's another thing to volunteer to be the guy's PR agent and to act as his buddy and his friend and try to figure out how to cover up the horror of what was going on, and to work with him in order to evade FARA registration. And this looks very bad. Obviously, nothing's been proved yet out in court, but this all looks very, very bad. All that can be said is one of two things with CPAC booking him to speak is either number one, they're completely out to lunch, which is totally believable, or number two, money was involved. Somebody paid to have Steve Bannon be on the stage, which is totally believable too. And so I don't know what's going on. What I do know is that it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, as what it looks like, at least on social media today. Everybody I think that I am aware of is making satirical CPAC invitation kind of posters, whether it's Lord Sauron from Lord of the Rings or Satan himself, or you name the unsavory character from any movie you watched growing up. Surprised I don't have like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters or something speaking at CPAC. You've got a guy out making these satirical things that are actually cutting really close to the bone. It's like, e-girl who converted to Catholicism 5 minutes ago, kid who called you the N-word on a video game. I mean, they're cutting really close to the bone to how the conservative movement has been very sloppy in determining who it's going to give major platforms to over the past 2 to 3 years. And I think it's a really good sign that the immune system that I mentioned before has woke up. But I don't know what CPAC is doing. I have no idea what would have led them to make this decision. All I know is that they've now put themselves in an unwinnable situation. They can either cancel him, in which case they've done that, and they have to deal with that firestorm, or they can continue having him and the mockery will continue. And I imagine that very few people are going to attend CPAC who aren't arranged to be there or just desperate for attention. So it's a very bad sign for the organization, but it's I think a healthy sign for the movement, because we're not putting up with it. And it looks like the straw that broke the camel's back.
What's the relationship between Alexander Dugin and Steve Bannon? I know that Tucker Carlson's interviewed him, but do you know what relationship there is between Bannon and Dugin?
Well, I mean, I only know a little bit, but certainly it's now pretty well reported, it's come out earlier than this as well, that right after President Trump kicked Bannon out of the White House back in 2018, in the fall of 2018, one of the first things Steve Bannon did in November of 2018 was he flew to Rome and had a private 6 or 8 hour long meeting with Alexander Dugin to strategize. So they have a relationship there that's quite explicit, that he was directly strategizing and planning with Alexander Dugin once he was no longer in Trump's White House in the first term. Secondly, they are both Dugin and Bannon are subscribers to a philosophical school called capital T traditionalism, which is not, your conservative traditional, I believe in my traditions of my country kind of thing, that Edmund Burke or somebody that conservatives respect would look up to or would believe. This is a traditionalism in a very weird esoteric sense. It was founded by a guy named René Guénon, a French philosopher. It's very esoteric. It's very dark. And Steve is he's dropped René Guénon's name a number of times. He follows Guénon's traditionalism, and so does Dugin. Dugin built a lot of his program out of that. So there is a relationship there philosophically. There was also a relationship there practically. Where that relationship is now is less clear. But like you said, Tucker Carlson has interviewed him. Aaron McIntyre at The Blaze has interviewed him once and hosted him for a debate with the other objectionable character called Nick Land more recently. He's been on a number of other shows. Alex Jones has been pushing Dugin's ideas since even before 2018. It's coming out that in 2016 and 17, Alex Jones had copies of the Foundations of Geopolitics on his desk that he would sometimes show in the clips of his show. And he's interviewed him countless times. So something very mysterious is going on there. Bannon is connected to that, but there's this entire wing of the conservative movement, or right-wing movement, I guess, has been tied up in Bannon's multipolarity theory that's driving all of the worst actors on the planet. The entire BRICS alliance is based on multipolarity theory. The Russians and the Chinese are behind that, of course. And even the World Economic Forum's goal was to talk about shifting to a multipolar world. So it looks very much like the so-called isolationists are actually just the kind of reverse wing of the same globalist project that we've been being subjected to for the past decade or two with great alarm.
So the Hegelian dialectic is what we're talking about here.
That's what I'm seeing.
Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, get them to collide. And if you have to go inside to get inside the Republican Party, the GOP, the Tea Party, a few decades ago, or the MAGA movement, get in there, paint yourself as one of them, and then use it to create that conflict.
That's right. So you got like the, left and right, up and down. These are the kinds of opposites that you could talk about. So, a lot of us are kind of aware that the left has this, very weird belief that all the religions are actually the same religion, but you just kind of have to get above all the religions and then you can see how they're the same. So you have this kind of cafeteria, pick and choose from this. Jesus was actually a Buddha, blah, blah, blah kind of mentality, this kind of theosophical mentality. And we're all very familiar with that if we've been studying things like the UN or some of the other.
Let me just stop you right there for using words that wouldn't maybe go over people's head. Another word would be the New Age movement.
New Age.
Talk about the UN. We're now really talking about Alice Bailey, the mother of the New Age movement, who greatly influenced Robert Mueller, the Secretary General of the UN, who added a prayer room at the UN. Which is very interesting because the mother of the New Age, Alice Bailey, an occultist who had a demon, they wrote over 10,000 pages together. The father of the New Age movement is actually Teilhard de Chardin, who is actually a Jesuit. And you take this back to Malachi Martin, the Jesuit who left the Jesuit order because he said, look, the communists, the Jesuits, the Marxists, the Freemasons, they will all work together to bring about a new world order. They will influence the seminaries until those younger guys or the older guys that put in a Marxist pope, which I think that was fulfilled under Pope Francis. So religion is driving so much of this. I had a conversation over the weekend on my way back to the Mid-South. On Sunday morning, I went down to the coffee shop to get my wife and I some coffee. And there were two guys there, a little bit older than I am, visiting. They were friends. They were traveling with their spouses, their wives. And somehow we started talking. They asked, what I was doing, why I was there, I was going to go out golfing or whatever. They were going to do that. And long story short, I told them what I did for a living, and they were very intrigued. And one of them looked up Worldview Tube and turned his phone around and said, "That's you?" I said, "That's us." And when we talked, they ended up saying, "We're going to be following you. We're going to be following you." But one of the things I said to them in this conversation was, guys, if you remember nothing else I say, remember this. Religion and spirituality and occultism is going to be at the center of all global events going forward. And if you don't understand worldviews, you don't understand the religions, the spirituality, the cults, if you don't understand the New Age movement, you're not going to understand what's driving this syncretism, where even you have the Southern Baptist merging with socialism, Marxism, which is why I wrote the book Marxianity, or Christianity merging with the New Age movement, or Islam merging with Christianity. You're going to be shocked. But if you don't understand the religious syncretism, you won't understand what's driving the world. That's what Malachi Martin was warning us about. And he died in 1999. And a lot of this came to pass after he died.
That's right. That's right. So here's your dialectic is, the left has this idea, sort of, if you just get above the religions, if you go up in some sense, you get above what Christianity teaches and look at it from an even higher perspective, then all the religions are kind of the same. So you could get above Islam and it's teaching the same thing, and above Hinduism, teaching the same thing. Well, this traditionalism of Dugin and traditionalism of Bannon believes the opposite. It's that all the religions are the same, but what you have to do is dig into one until you get all the way to the bottom. And when you dig all the way, bore all the way to the bottom of a religion, you see that they're all the same. And so you have to pick some authentic tradition. That's why it's called traditionalism, whether that's Orthodox Christianity or Orthodox Catholicism or whatever. And you have to bore to the very bottom of that belief. It could be Islam. In fact, Rene Guénon converted to Islam before he died. And so you bore to the very bottom of a single tradition, and what you find at the bottom is that everything's the same. So the left, the dialectic is one side, the left side of this new age spiritual movement is pushing up in this kind of kumbaya, ecumenicism, everybody's equal and valid inclusion model. And the traditionalist that's appealing to right wings is that you have to get into the most authentic, authoritative tradition that you can and get more and more and more extreme in it. So you're going to lock into your one tradition till you get to the very bottom, but it's the same model. You still have the fundamental belief that all the religions are the same religion. You're just either going to float above them or bore below them. So of course they're going to be able to work together because they have the same core heretical belief at their center.
How do you fit in the Doug Wilsons, who I think is a nut? I've talked about Doug
Wilson.
He's
an opportunist, honestly.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So my guess is that Doug he sees an opportunity. I'm just going to remind a lot of people viewing, though, because a lot of people like Doug right now, and they didn't know who Doug was, but Doug came onto the scene kind of prominently a couple of years ago. He's been floating around for 20-something years, of course.
That's exactly right.
But he came kind of prominently onto the scene a couple of years ago, and he was saying a lot of the right stuff. He sounds really good. He sounded like he had a lot of his ducks in a row, his eggs in the right basket. And I want to remind people where that happened. Tucker Carlson is the one who brought him into prominence out of his kind of Moscow, Idaho corner of Christendom up in the Pacific Northwest region. And so Tucker brings him into prominence, and all of a sudden the entire conservative movement, I guess we could make the joke about the CPAC posters again, decides, oh, wow, look at this pastor, look how great he is. And so what we've got is Doug on his best behavior coming out into the world and, ending up working with Charlie Kirk, ending up getting all over the Turning Point Faith circuit.
Secretary of War,
that's right. That's a CREC, a CREC church as well that Pete Hegseth belongs to. And so that's in the Doug Wilson family of churches. And so what you actually have is, I think that Doug is playing his cards actually fairly well to try to be the not anti-Semitic radical who gets to slide in as these more anti-Semitic radicals discredit themselves. And I think it's a very opportunistic move. And I think that we will not be well served by his theological visions.
Who, by the way,
attaining
believes
access to government power.
Who believes the church is Israel. I have the quotes by Doug Wilson saying the church is Israel.
Yes.
So you've got a Reconstructionism, a Dominionism, which I've been writing about for decades and warning about for decades, which fits very well with the New World Order, with the idea of we've got to usher in the kingdom of God. We've got to build the kingdom of God here on earth, where we know Daniel 2, verse 44 to 45 says God brings his kingdom and it comes out of heaven, not cut by human hands. Yet they're going to build it. Rush Dooney taught this, Gary North. I mean, we could go on with the guys teaching this, right? And of course, it fits really well with the craziness of Paula White and the Word of Faith and the New Apostolic Reformation that I've wrote a whole book on in 2011. So this is who's orbiting around and in the Trump administration and MAGA movement, which is bringing massive confusion. And then you've got Tucker and Candace Owens and Steve Bannon, all these guys are bringing massive confusion. And you can see now whether enemies have done this deliberately, which I think some have, and then also it's a spiritual situation. The confusion inside the conservative Christian camp is so overwhelming, it cannot survive, and it cannot propagate a consistent worldview and values and behavior that produces good public policy and good government. It is a poison, it's a cancer, and it is going to destroy the whole system. And that's what's happening, but people don't see this. However this ends up, if the New Apostolic Reformation, Word of Faith, ecumenical crowd, New Agers, if these people get their way, you would want what they have. I've said back in 2011, if the New Apostolic Reformation prophets and apostles get control of the government, they're basically the Christian Taliban. You won't want to live under these people. So the sad thing is President Trump doesn't understand these worldviews. And of course, he says his own pastor was Norman Vincent Peale, who basically was the guy that mentored Robert Schuller. Robert Schuller admits, and Rick Warren admits, that's who mentored Rick Warren. That gives us the purpose-driven churches, which was a cancer on our evangelical world. And so this is such a mixture of a soup that is not edible, that is actually poison, that can only help but to end in either complete catastrophe or more likely sets up a convergence of beliefs that ushers in the system of Antichrist.
It's totally plausible. You start talk about people who believe that all the faiths are the same faith, and that when we all understand that, that humanity can save itself, you're kind of on that track. And like I said, the left-wing approach to that, this is weird ecumenicism. This is in fact Rick Warren, by the way, with his work that he did with the World Economic Forum in the purpose-driven church. And then on the other hand, you can have this much more right-wing approach that's the hyper-traditionalist, and everybody's got to not just become Catholic, but some very strange, semi-Sedevacanist trad-cath thing that's not even, they're calling it Timu Catholicism on the internet. People don't even believe it's real. But this is very aggressive and all over the place. And again, the point right now in the short term is to get us all fighting with each other. We're no longer a unified coalition that's going to try to stop these evil forces. We're going to balkanize ourselves. We're going to break into little groups, and we're going to see radicals that unify according to Carl Schmitt's friend-enemy distinction. So they'll take bad friends like the Red-Green Alliance. Why are communists and Muslims working together? Well, it's very simple, because they don't care to work together to destroy us. They have a common enemy, which is us. So they've taken up this idea, anybody that fights their enemy is their friend. And these guys have the same logic. So you're starting to see these different rogue elements start to work together, because their goal is actually to take down President Trump. It's to take down the conservative movement in the Republican Party, make it disorganized and prevent it from being able to win. And it's also to defeat America overall, to take America off of the table. One of the key pieces to that is to sever our relationship in the Middle East with Israel. And one of the key tools that they're doing is to use Israel as a scapegoat to make us fight each other.
So well said. Here's Dugin. Here's a little snippet of him.
And we are going to distribute nuclear weapon to everybody who can use it against the West. So I think we are going to supply all kind of strategical weapon to all enemies of American hegemony, Western hegemony against NATO, starting from Middle East to the Far East to North America.
Okay, so here he is, talking about providing nuclear weapons to countries that want to use them against the West. He's saying Russia plans to do this. See, I believe Iran has had a nuclear weapon for a long time. Peter Vincent Pry used to sit at this desk and said that as we produced his TV show, we produced his weekly radio show, that they've already got a nuclear weapon. The question isn't, do they have one? The question is, how many do they have? Some have said, well, they didn't have a delivery system. I don't think that's true either. I think Peter Pry clearly shows that they had the technology for a delivery system as well. So I think Iran probably got it either with the help of Russia or more likely North Korea, who of course is helping North Korea. So you put all these actors together, and I think these are the people that are largely funding a lot of the mouthpieces in America. Because, I've been doing this 36 years, okay? I know how hard it is to build a network, to build an audience, and to maintain it, and to fund an operation. It's so expensive. And I say to the guys in the control room all the time, when these people pop up out of nowhere and all of a sudden have hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of followers, and they're everywhere, that's very suspicious to me. Because I've been doing this 36 years, 19 books, multiple documentaries, and every month is a constant effort to keep the funds coming in, the capital going, and producing quality television and radio and books. And yet these guys pop up out of nowhere. Most of them, no books, no documentaries, no white papers. They've never gone and presented a white paper to a bunch of PhDs like I have done. They have no scholarship. And they pop up, and all of a sudden they seem to have unlimited funds and now millions of followers. And I say to the guys in the control room, that's not someone that I trust. I don't care if they're saying everything I'm saying. I don't trust them. Anyone that pops up like that without years of work and building it is someone that is being advanced. And whether it's the CIA or another foreign government doing it, you better look out. Even if they're saying what you like, you better know all that's nothing but honey to attract you. But anyone that can get that advancement had help. So who has the money, who has the technology, and who has the objectives to launch someone like that? And that's why I don't trust guys. I don't trust Benny Johnson. I don't trust Jack Posobiec. I don't trust any of these characters.
Nope, not one bit. And I've seen that dynamic too. And, the answers are not ever pretty. You've got the U.S. government, whether you said CIA, you've got the Democrats, and you've got bad foreign actors. That's
CCP.
pretty much your whole list.
How many of them getting CCP? I'm not accusing anybody in particular, but how many of them out there in social media world are getting CCP money? How many of them are tied to CCP characters?
Yeah, that's right. They post it at times in ways that are like, oh, China's the safest place I've ever visited. It's like, why are you saying, look at the light show at the city in Shanghai. China is so technologically advanced. It's like, why are you posting that? That's really weird. So yeah, this is all very suspicious. I don't think it's organic either. I'm completely with you. I'm very, evidence is one thing and we should always wait for that, but very suspicious of many of these characters who, like you said, they seem like they have been advanced very quickly. I'm like you. I've slogged my way to what I have over a very long period of time. I've had a couple of distinct jumps in my following, which occurred after I went on Joe Rogan's podcast, which, will increase your following as it does. And, but those are still not even that big of jumps. I'm not even that big of a character in the world. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think.
And yet, look at all the truth you're speaking. Look at all the dots you're connecting. Look at all the information you're putting out that I can validate from my 36 years of doing this. I mean, you and I are having a conversation that's not rehearsed, and we're going back and forth about the New Age movement, Alice Bailey, the UN, ecumenicalism, the Jesuits, not because we've rehearsed this and said, hey, here's what we're going to talk about. It's because I've done my homework, you've done your homework, and I can validate what you're saying based on my work. You can validate what I'm saying based on your work. So a guy like you should have millions of people following, right? But instead, guys like us get shadow banned. Mm-hmm. And that's when we're not being completely blocked.
That's right. That's right. I was kicked off Twitter for 5 months in 2022. And yeah, the shadow ban issues, I don't know what's going on. My following on Twitter used to grow, and then it just stopped growing about a year and a half ago completely. It's moved a couple thousand out of about 500,000, so it's just barely moved at all. Not even more than, I think, about 1% growth in the past year and a half, 2 years. So it's all very suspicious. Whereas you see these other characters, this woman Carrie Prejean Bowler interrupts a religious liberty commission that President Trump holds, and the next thing you know, she goes from 4,000 followers to over 100,000 followers, and all she says every day is the same thing: is that Catholics are anti-Zionists. She just says the same thing over and over and over again, and cries about trying to kick the fake Christians out. She's been a Christian, I mean, I guess that's good, but she's been a Christian for less than a year, and she's screaming about what real Christians believe and trying to kick all the other ones out.
Wait. Just one clarification. She's been a Catholic, particularly, for what? A few months, right?
Since April last year.
Okay, yeah. So she's been a Catholic, and now she's now she's trying to tell us what all Catholics believe after she's been one for 12 months.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And here she is, by the way, upset at Mark Levin. You're an evil man, Mark. You cheer on the starvation, bombing, and mass killing of innocent human life in Gaza, a real Holocaust we're all witnessing. Really? Where's your proof, sweetheart? Where's your proof of that? We have all kinds of information that that's not true, okay?
Yeah, I can't even read that post because it's in Arabic.
What?
It's a joke.
Okay. I thought maybe somebody really took it and put that out there. You don't give a blank about the innocent schoolgirls in Iran who were killed by the country that is your God. Okay. First of all, Carrie, there is no proof yet that Israel did this. I just had on for an hour last night Matt Tardio, who's showing that the evidence is 100%. He says that we didn't do it. America didn't do it. That's not a tomahawk. It's likely Iran, and they hit that school twice. So there's no proof yet that Israel did it or America. In fact, again, Tardio, people can watch it at worldviewtube.com if you missed it last night, says there's zero chance the U.S. hit this thing. Of course, the New York Times is going to say all this garbage. Israel just murdered a Catholic priest, and you say nothing. I have no idea what she's talking about. Repent, Mark. Give your life to Christ, your king. Okay, whatever, Carrie, Regine, Bowler. Wow. I mean, she's just become an ugly individual.
She's the worst representative Catholicism's probably ever had, public facing. It's really shocking. And that's really saying something, you know, given some of the scandals and troubles that the Catholic Church has had.
Let's go back to Tucker Carlson, because Tucker, here he is, he interviewed Alexander Dugin. He's the most famous political philosopher in Russia. His ideas are considered so dangerous, the Ukrainian government murdered his daughter and Amazon won't sell his books. We talked to him in Moscow. Wow. You know, if I start flying to Moscow, if I'm talking about getting an apartment in Qatar, if I'm talking about how I feel so safe in the Islamic world and I'm a devout Christian, I feel so safe here, you know, that's just really odd behavior. If I started doing that, you might be concerned, right? If I start giving these like really friendly interviews to Putin. So, I mean, this guy, is he CIA or is he just a useful idiot?
I have no idea. I've heard a variety of things, but I've seen no proof of anything. I mean, everybody speculates that there's money flowing through. People call him Tucker Carlson for a reason. But, you know, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the reason that Qatar is what it is in the world is because it's likely very deeply connected to deep state stuff. And so that could tie him back in. I mean, Putin made fun of him in their interview and, you know, pointed out that, you know, his father was CIA, but then I understand you tried to be a CIA and failed. Ha, ha, ha. So I don't think Putin brought that up for no reason, but I don't know what the reason is. So I don't know what his deal is. I've also heard that he could be being blackmailed. I don't know if that's true or not. Different rumors are floating around, but we can all tell very clearly that even though Tucker's economic views have not aligned with conservatives in a very long time, that he's had and been caught expressing anti-Trump views and anti-MAGA views for a very long time, we can all tell that he has had a dramatic change and turn in his behavior, at least since late 2024, if not a little bit earlier than that, kind of really starting when he decided to platform what he called the world's most honest historian, who would be this Daryl Cooper character who claimed that Churchill may be the chief villain of World War II, which, by the way, he did immediately before he did a tour where he sat down with nearly every prominent conservative media personality who none of them stepped back. In other words, so they had to wrestle with this for themselves. Tucker just platformed a Nazi apologist. Will I still appear with him? Yeah, the audience is worth it. I'll go. And so every one of them did, and every one of them got caught under, you know, that level of sway. I think Tucker did that on purpose, personally. But certainly since then, that was fall 24, he's taken a undeniable turn, if that turn didn't happen earlier. And this is also right around when he went to Russia. So what's going on? I don't know. But something is, I think, obviously going on.
Then he interviewed the guy that was promoting Agenda 2030 and globalism, Jeffrey Sachs, right?
Several times, like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I think he's interviewed him, maybe more than that. So he's really been tight with Jeffrey Sachs, who is, and this guy's very pro-CCP. You know, Jeffrey Sachs sits on
big-time UN guy.
That's right. He'll sit on a stage and say China's not a threat. China's not an enemy. And at least he said China's not a threat and we shouldn't be paying any attention to it. I don't know if he said it's not an enemy. But Jeffrey Sachs and Tucker has been a kind of recurring theme for a couple of years now. So yeah, either something changed or Tucker stopped being so cautious about how he was going about what he was doing before. But that's been very visible for at least 2 years now, undeniably.
And here is Jeffrey Sachs. Listen to this, guys.
And there's one other concept that I find very, very useful. And it's actually embodied in the European idea. It came from the Catholic Church originally, but it's called subsidiarity. And the idea of subsidiarity is, let's get real. We need governments at all levels. We need a global government, that's the UN. We need a regional government, that's the European Union. We need a national government, that is the government of Cyprus. We need a local government, that is the Nicosia City Hall where we are right now. You have governments at all levels.
We need a global government, that's the UN. Of course, I'm not so sure the UN is going to last. I think they're under financial collapse now. And they may very well end up being replaced by the International Peace Board, which in itself is a very strange animal, particularly, of course, when you then add in the relationship that it's going to play in Gaza, which is going to basically be a 15-minute city, a digital city, technocracy. Then you add in all the tech bros, this whole thing. I just said to my audience when President Trump won the second time, and I was glad he did. I didn't want Kamala. I just said, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to praise him when he does good. And when I'm concerned with what his administration's doing, I'm going to say so. Because God willing, long after President Trump's term is come and gone, I'll still be here. Right? I've been doing this 36 years, as I keep saying. So I've seen in that 36 years, a lot of presidents and politicians come and go. I'm not for sale. I don't take money from any government. I don't take money from any special interest groups. I don't get money from any group aligned with the Trump administration, any companies aligned to the Trump administration. I don't get money from Israel. I'm a listener, donor supported network, and we serve our donors. Most of all, we serve the Lord, but we serve to the benefit of our donors and supporters to be a truth-telling network that is committed to doing so through the lens of the Bible, Bible prophecy, eschatology, theology, worldview. So I have some great praise for the Trump administration in some areas. Other areas, I'm very concerned. And when I look at this International Peace Board, that's one of them. The tech bros, I personally don't trust J.D. Vance. Don't trust him one bit.
Nope, me either.
And Marco Rubio maybe wouldn't be my first choice, but I'll take Marco Rubio over J.D. Vance. Marco Rubio seems a little more authentic to me than J.D. I don't trust J.D. at all. And the fact that Tucker Carlson's son is in J.D. Vance's office, right? We still haven't heard J.D. Vance denounce the garbage of Tucker. So this is going to be very interesting moving forward. But as we get ready to wrap here, I want your thoughts on this related to the International Peace Board, because this is going to outlive President Trump. And he gets to pick the next person. And he can do this after his administration. President Trump may end up being one of the most powerful people in the world even after his administration. Talk about that.
Yeah, I share some of your concerns about this board. The idea of getting rid of the United Nations, which is something, of course, I've advocated for a long time, is not to replace the United Nations with something that works in an even more efficient, less democratic way that you can drop $1 billion and get onto the board. The idea was to break away from the idea of some kind of global or international governance that can meddle in the affairs of nations that are otherwise sovereign. And so, and that's even saying that I understand the function the United Nations was in some senses meant to achieve in brokering peace across nations and bringing people to the dialogue table. But this board is a extremely concerning thing for me. I agree with you that this could be a very powerful position going forward in the world. And I look at this, and I wonder, what is the role of these so-called tech bros, these huge tech players? Are they going to have an outsized, influence within that board? Or is it meant to serve a lot of their interests? Is it meant to design, like you said, Gaza as a full-blown smart city? Now you see that the project that they were doing in Saudi about that, the line as they called it, NEOM, has been canceled partway through, and all of a sudden, people are suggesting that maybe they're just going to move the project to Gaza under this governance board, and this is extremely concerning to me. The goal was not to move into the technocratic control system of the future by President Trump. The goal was to elect President Trump to stop that thing. So I'm hoping that that's not what this is, and that we're able to do something with it. But it will not be as the UN, for all of its awful characteristics, is at least still somewhat democratic. It's slow, it's bureaucratic. There's votes on everything and people who don't agree, which has the benefit of being slow. And a board that doesn't have to do that is a scarier implement at that level of global governance. So I'm concerned.
Do you realize you just said something that's actually in the Bible? The first chapter of the book of Revelation, it says that when these things begin to happen, they will happen quickly. And you go back to the original language of the book that John was writing in, and the word means quickly. When these things begin to happen, they're going to happen quickly. And isn't it interesting? You just laid out and said, look, this International Peace Board, if this ends up being the power center, and it very well could be, that shadows and replaces the UN and moves much quicker with less bureaucracy, and now it'll be allowed to move quickly. So isn't it interesting? Things begin to happen when this book begins to unfold, Revelation, quickly, which means you have to have processes by which these things can happen quickly. And so as you were describing that, wait a minute, that lines right up with the Bible. Rapid fire questions and answers. Here we go. We have news today. FBI warns Iran aspired to attack California with drones in retaliation for war. My concern has been for some time America being attacked by drones, by Club K cargo systems, $10 million, lid lifts up, 2 to 4 silos for warheads. Talked about it in my documentary 2018, Sabotage. If we have an attack and it comes from Iran, can you imagine with me the backlash this is going to be on Christians, Christian Zionists, Jews, because all of the ills will now be blamed on the Jews. Can you even imagine? I mean, if I said yesterday, Paul Harvey did a thing back in the 60s called If I Were the Devil. And Paul Harvey laid out all the things he would do if he were the devil, and they've all happened. If I were playing the role of the devil, one of the things I would be sure to do is make sure that America goes down in flames for a lot of reasons. Because he hates America, who has stood with Israel. America has sent out missionaries around the world, Christian broadcasting, publishing, seminaries, colleges. I mean, it's amazing what God has allowed America to do when it comes to fulfilling the Great Commission. But if you want to bring down America, another way you could do it is internally by maneuvering so that Iran does attack America in such a way, cyber, infrastructure, power grid, drones, whatever, polluting water, and then nail it back to Iran and watch the people say, we wouldn't be any of this mess if it wasn't for Israel. And I keep trying to figure out what is it that causes all the nations of the world to turn against Israel, as the Bible says. Obviously, it's spiritual, but I think something has to happen in the material world too. And I'm wondering if it isn't that these wars all end up being blamed on Israel. It's all Israel's fault. So when I read something like the FBI warns of Iran hacking us with drones off our coast, or IRGC attacking us with drones from Mexico, you ain't seen nothing when it comes to the anti-Semitism if Iran has any success in targeting us here over our own kitchen tables, meaning kitchen table issues, right? Food, fuel, livelihood, or if any of their terrorists go after our children that we've been warning about as a real threat at these schools. You ain't seen nothing when it comes to the anti-Semitism, because they're all going to look for a scapegoat, and it's going to be the Jews.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So I'm hoping that the FBI and President Trump and the military are all ready to go to protect American citizens completely for that. Another issue that I worry about in the same way is I see the tons of propaganda. You know, Tucker Carlson was even pushing this idea the other day that with McGregor, that the that Israel is going to nuke Iran because it's not going fast enough. And if you're right that that Iran has a nuclear weapon, I don't put it past them to nuke themselves and blame Israel to get the exact same reaction. And then you're going to have at least a few days, if not longer, of the fog of war where nobody knows for sure. We know that if that happens, a nuclear blast happened. Nobody knows where it came from, and every one of their propaganda outlets is going to push that it was Israel. They're already laying the narrative for that. And you'd have a similar reaction there as well. So I remain very concerned about these possibilities, even while I support this action against the evil regime of Iran.
I want to go and show your Twitter feed. I do have some good news. We sent David Gobbets. We asked David Gobbets to go undercover for us. I don't know if you know who Dave Gobbets is, but we asked Dave to go undercover for us. He's been undercover in about 425 mosques in America. We asked him last year, paid his airfare honorarium to go into the mosque there in Texas, Epic City, Yasser Qadi's thing. We talked about it. He wrote us a report, an affidavit. Our team has now been contacted by an investigator out of the Attorney General Paxton's office, wanting all that information, if we would help them with that information. Dave Gobbets is going to be communicating with them today, if he hasn't already. I think he has. But good news. Some of the work we're doing is now getting traction at some high places, of which we're really thankful. This has been a fascinating interview, and I want to point people to your website, to your Twitter feed. Tell our audience what your Twitter feed is. I think I got it right here. Here we go. Here it is. Here it is, at Conceptual James. Did I got that right?
That's me. Yep, okay. Conceptual James, that's me. And there's my website, newdiscourses.com, right underneath the Liberty First part.
This has been a very important conversation. Can I ask you, I don't want to sound like we're patting ourselves on the back, but are you able to come on broadcast and have this much of a wide-ranging conversation with many of the talk show hosts out there?
It depends on the host. I usually am, yes. I know my subject. I've read pretty widely. I haven't read everything, and there are gaps in my knowledge, of course, but I tend to be pretty flexible and fluid to have these conversations. But it depends. If the guy talking to me doesn't know what he's talking about, then it can only go a little deeper than where he is, So you're actually really fantastic. This is a much more wide-ranging interview than I normally would have because you're very informed. So the answer is yes, depending on the quality of the interviewer.
Well, I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at, is that knowledge is so important, right? Knowledge, the acquisition of truth. So we have wisdom, the application of that. But if the average person's watching podcasts that are people that are not studied and presenting these informations through the lens of history and through the lens of the Bible or through the lens of worldview wars, we're never going to get to the solutions for the people if we aren't understanding the source of the problems. And I'm not convinced that a lot of the podcasters out there, most of them are serious students. I think most of them are interested in an inch deep and a mile wide. Because when you keep it an inch deep and a mile wide, you attract the bigger audience, right? As soon as you start using words like communitarianism, Fabian socialism, all these things, your audience starts to what? And which is why we try to stop and define terms so we can bring new people on board. But I'm frustrated at the lack of seriousness of most of the podcasters and broadcasters out there today who should be taking advantage of people like you, but I'm not sure could go very deep into the water with you.
It happens. I mean, the fact of the matter is, and what most people actually just need to keep in mind with their podcasters is the truth is that most of them are entertainers. They operate in that space that's called infotainment, and that's fine. I've never been one of these guys that's like never eat junk food. Every now and then you want to grab a pizza or some tacos or something. Eat it sometimes, but you have to know what you're eating, right? So they're entertainment. Some of them are very entertaining. Sometimes they have very interesting guests. Sometimes they can deliver to you, the beginning of a story or the news story, but you're going to have to use that as a launching pad to dig deeper for yourself. Don't take it as the final word. So it's not so much, don't listen to your favorite podcasters or your favorite shows, but know what you're listening to. Most of them are entertainers. A lot of them, just to be a little rude, but a lot of them are failed actors who couldn't get a job in Hollywood, so they became conservative podcasters. And that's fine. Their job is to entertain people. But if you are somebody who's seeking truth and wants to understand the world around you and make good decisions, you need something deeper. You need something a little bit more solid. What I do on my podcast primarily, not exclusively, is read primary sources to people. If I'm not going to tell you what Adolf Hitler thought, I'm going to read to you a chapter from Mein Kampf and show you what he thought. And then if you aren't sure, if you think I read it wrong, go read it for yourself. You can double check me on every single thing that I present. And so, I hope people will be attracted to that depth. At least some people will be, because that depth is what's going to get you that level of knowledge that gets you to be able to engage. But just keep in mind, a lot of podcasters, it can be frustrating, but they're entertainers, and entertainment is what it is. Everybody likes to listen to, a rock show every now and then. It's fine.
Well, I'm glad we got people like you that are more than about entertainment. Again, take a look at where he's at so you can follow him and learn more from him. NewDiscourses.com, Conceptual James on X. Thank you, James, for being with us and being so generous with your time tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's our broadcast for tonight. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. As always, you help make this possible. WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. Hey, would you give $10 a month, folks? Would you give $20 a month? It's really not that much. But I'll tell you, when you add it to the gifts of other people, it adds up real fast. I check every day to see how we're doing. Some days I get a little discouraged. Other days I'm quite encouraged. But folks, we need to hear from you. We need more regular donors. Thank you to those that already are. If you can afford to do so, would you start tonight? WorldviewFoundation.com. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues,